The following conversations are taken from our channel membership exclusive weekly live show that we do on Saturdays from 10 a.m. Pacific Standard Time to 11 a.m. Pacific Standard Time called Members Talk Live. Find out how you can become a member and appear on the show. All of the information is down in the description below, as well as all of the links to the channels of today's guests. Check them out, and I hope to talk with you very soon. What's going on, members? Thank you for joining me for another episode of Members Talk Live. Today's topic, we got James Gunn's DCU. Is it looking like a mess? I'm very excited to talk with all you guys about this today. If you're just joining the live stream now, if you are part of the $6.99 tier, the link to join the StreamYard is up on our community post. So head on over to our community tab and you'll find the link to join the show here. I see that DxarkMovies is in the chat, dude. So if you want to jump on camera, if you want to join us, the link is there. And yeah, we'll just get started. We'll just start off straight away with our topic. The topic today, guys, is James Gunn's DCU. Is it looking like a mess? All right, let's bring it on. Let's get DJ from MovieTimeMinute on in here, man. What's going on, dude?
Hey, Zach. It's great to be here.
It's great to meet you. It's a pleasure to have you here, and thank you so much for being a member.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, I mean, I guess we can just start with the DCEU. What was your thoughts on the DCEU before James Gunn took over?
So I'm not quite as negative as I see a lot online are with the DCEU. There are hit and misses for me, but as a huge DC fan in general, I mean I've been reading these comics since I was yay tall to a grasshopper, and just seeing these characters come onto the big screen, getting to witness that in person has been a dream come true for me. Even something that was a hot mess like Justice League, I remember sitting in that theater and saying, wow, this is actually happening, as the movie was coming on. So it's been a positive experience for me, even with a few misses here and there.
I think a lot of people were saying, wow, this is actually happening, but maybe not in the most positive of ways.
Yeah. I understand those criticisms too.
So who was your go-to character to read, and why was it Batman?
I do like Batman, but it was not Batman. Before Green Arrow was popular, I was a Green Arrow fan.
Oh, nice.
My dad used to show me the Super Friends cartoons when I was a kid, because he grew up with those. And there was one episode in the first season of Super Friends where Green Arrow shows up and has to save the rest of the Justice League. And just something about that, the guy with no powers, with just a bow and arrow, having to save Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, all those others, that really took into me. And that's what got me into comic books in general. Started reading Green Arrow and on. And now he's popular, and it's not as... I guess it's cool to be a fan of him now, but it didn't used to be.
I feel like he's still a character though that's pretty outside the box. Like when you ask people about DC characters, Green Lantern, Wonder Woman, Batman, Nightwing, even, but you don't get a lot of Green Arrows. So that's awesome, man. That's the character that brought you in. So you were a fan of the Zack Snyderverse. Were you disappointed when it was over, or were you okay with that?
I was actually happy. I've loved most of these movies. I'm happy with most of them, but I didn't like the direction that it had been going. I'm not as big of a Snyder enthusiast, even though Man of Steel is my favorite of these movies. I'm not the biggest enthusiast of some of the decisions he made in some of these movies. So I was kind of glad to see a reboot coming. And I'm a huge James Gunn fan, so I'm all for this.
Perfect. Well, that brings us into the next question. And I mean, we thought a reboot was coming, but we'll get into that in just a little bit.
Yeah.
But James Gunn, kind of out of nowhere, he did the Suicide Squad and he killed it with the Suicide Squad. But it wasn't really, I don't think anyone predicted that he was going to become the head of DC, or they would even have a DC Studios that he would lead. So when that gets announced, how are you, you're probably over the moon because you said you were a James Gunn fan, right? So how are you feeling when they announced that James Gunn was taking over?
The three Guardians movies are probably in my top 10. All three movies make it my top 10 MCU for me. So I love the work he's done. I love the Suicide Squad, love Peacemaker. That stuff speaks for itself for me. Also going back to stuff like Slither and Super that he made. I love those movies as well. So I was happy with that aspect of it, but it would make me nervous just knowing that he's a creative and the business side of it would make me nervous if not for the Peter Safran side of that story.
Yes, and that's the person. I feel bad for Peter Safran because he always gets missed. Even me, like
Yeah.
James Gunn's DCU, because it's catchy. That's the headline. That's what people are clicking on. But Peter Safran, he's a big part of this, and that's
Yeah.
something I was excited for too. Is James Gunn being the creative side and Peter Safran being the business
And
side.
Peter's got experience with several things. I mean, the Conjuring universe that he was a big
Yep.
part of as producer. Going back to even comedy, he was executive producer on Scary Movie. So I mean, he's got some experience here and there, and I think that's a positive that it's not just James Gunn. That it's a team working on this.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think that's what's going to make it work because I'm still very excited about James Gunn. I'm still very excited. Since I heard the news, I thought it was a great decision. However, and this brings us into the question today, because we haven't seen anything from this universe, so we can't say whether or not it is a mess or not. But just from the outside looking in, there are some concerns that are kind of rising for me, especially this past week. We've gotten some very contradictory information. Gal Gadot saying, I'm still here. Some source is saying she is not. Like, how are you feeling about the DCU from its transition from the DCEU to becoming a DCU? How are you feeling about this period right now? Do you feel like it's going smoothly, or do you think there's some bumps in the road?
I think it appears to have some bumps, but I also am trying to differentiate and look at, hey, what has Gunn actually said and what has he not? What of this is coming from fan perspective, coming from other sources, actors just talking to talk? I don't know what's real and not real on that stuff. All I can go on is what I'm seeing from James and Peter and what they're putting out there. And so far, what they've put out, I've been happy with.
Right. So you were totally okay. I mean, I was too, by the way. Henry Cavill being pushed out the door.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, Man of Steel is my favorite DCU movie, but I mean, he's getting older. I want a fresh look at Superman, even if some of the other characters do come back that didn't. I mean, that's going to push some buttons with some people, I know. I love Henry. Don't get me wrong. I'm also really excited to see David Corn Sweat.
Yeah, I've not seen anything from that kid. I'm looking forward to seeing what he does though.
Right before that announcement came, my wife and I just watched Pearl and saw him in that, and to go from that to this, and I'm like, yeah, I see it. It works for me, so I'm excited for that.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing that that I was really on board with when James Gunn was announced, is it seemed like that's what we were going to get more of. We were gonna, and I'm not saying like they've announced some castings already, but they've announced castings for characters that were never in the DCEU to begin with, like Hawkgirl and stuff like that. So when they started like, hey, Henry Cavill's out, we're gonna look for a new Superman, I was like, this is what we need, because almost saying that like we're getting a new Superman and Henry Cavill is what started the DCEU, that was like telling everybody, yeah, because we're getting rid of the person that started the DCEU is officially gone, right?
Yeah.
But now we're starting to hear, well, pieces of the debris might land in the DCU. We might still have Peacemaker. We will still have Peacemaker it sounds definite that we're going to still have Peacemaker and Waller. And I think Margot Robbie is up in the air for Harley Quinn, and Gal Gadot says that she's coming, but
possibly, yeah.
Do you think that's a way to go with this though? Like, do you think that there should be any remnants of the old DCEU in the DCU?
A perfect world for me would be a full reboot, full new casting, start completely over. But if anybody's going to make chaos work, I feel like James is the one to do it. And I hate to just keep putting him on that platform, but until I see him do something wrong, and by my standards, then I'm just going to keep supporting the guy, I guess. But I mean, this is a guy that can take completely obscure, nobody's ever heard of characters and make them household names. So if he can do some of that kind of stuff, bring the heart that he brings to some of these movies, I think he can take the existing characters and make it work in a way that will work for us on the screen. At least I hope so.
Me too, man. I really do hope so. Because like James Gunn, like you said, super creative. If anyone's going to be able to do this, I do think it's him. But at the same time,
not the easy route.
Not the easy route at all. But with the fans at this moment, do you think James Gunn not owes it to us because he doesn't owe us anything, but he is on Twitter a lot, so he doesn't seem
Yeah,
to have any excuses as
he
to
likes
why
to
he
talk.
couldn't explain a little bit more of what exactly his vision is for this. Like, do you think that we need to get to a point soon where James Gunn comes out and just tells us what's happening?
So I think it's been really unfortunate, all of the SAG and WGA strikes and stuff right now, because I feel
Yeah,
like Comic Con would have been bigger. We might have got to see some of that. I feel like there might be more announcements, and there's a train. I hope that's not bothering you too much here.
I can't hear it. No, you're good.
Okay. Um, I feel like we might have gotten more announcements and different things said if some of this other background noise wasn't happening right now. So I don't. I'm trying not to hold that against them right now too.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I was looking forward to Comic Con with him. I thought that they were going to blow the roof off the place. I definitely like. I don't know how you feel about this kind of stuff, but like, I would have loved to have like David Cornsweet announced as Superman at Comic
Yeah.
Con when
Yeah.
stuff like
Absolutely.
that. Like that was we were all like anticipating who's going to be the new Superman, and to have it just kind of dropped in a Hollywood Reporter article. I
Yeah.
always find that kind of disappointing, kind of lame. Like, I hope the Fantastic Four doesn't have that. Like, I would love a big presentation for the Fantastic Four.
Yeah.
So that was kind of disappointing, and that was definitely an effect of not having Comic Con.
Yeah. I agree. Uh, you need these big events to make these announcements. If for nothing else, than to just not have it in the middle of a work week, middle of the day, where people aren't expecting it, and then can't get the Discord and the talk and the all that out there with it. So it makes it
Yeah,
less of
yeah,
a
absolutely,
event.
man. So, I guess we'll just end with answering the question. As of this moment, is the DCU looking like a mess? Yes or no?
To me, no.
No. Okay.
I'm going to say no on this. I still am holding out hope. I still think until we get more talk from James Gunn, like we're talking about, I, I'm not going to call it a mess yet.
All right, man. That's fair, man. I'm still not actually sure where I land on if it's a mess or not. But as of
I
right
mean, I can change my
now,
mind next week, but
yeah, exactly, right? As more information comes out, if we find out that like freaking Jared Leto is coming back as Joker or something,
yeah,
like yeah, it's up for debate. But I do think there is some things there for concern. So I appreciate you being here, man. I appreciate you
absolutely.
talking with me, dude.
Thanks
And
for letting me know.
yeah, it was great meeting you, and I look forward to having more conversations with you in the future. But before you move on, we bring on Ken from See for Yourself. Why don't you tell people where they can find you?
So of course I'm on YouTube on at Movie Time Minute. I'm also on Threads at Movie Time Minute. You can find me there. I post all my videos there as well for people that don't want to try to follow the YouTube channel. And I just created a new Discord for this channel as well. Also Movie Time Minute. So be happy for anybody to join in on that and just have regular chat discussion on that channel.
Absolutely, man. And guys, totally check him out. His link in the description below. So give him some love, give him some support. And once again, man, appreciate you being here, and we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Appreciate
Enjoy
it.
your weekend.
You bet.
All right. We know this guy's gonna have some stuff to say about this. You got Ken. Ken from
Hey,
Steve for Yourself. How you doing today, man?
quite well. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing pretty good. All
Yeah,
right.
I'm excited for this topic, man.
Yeah, I'm excited for this topic too, man, because I think it's especially recently there's been a lot of stuff going on
Yep.
recently with the DCU that has a lot of fans scratching their heads, a lot of people kind of upset, and I just kind of want to figure out where the fan base is kind of standing with you guys. And with you, how are you feeling about the DC movies before James Gunn took over, and how are you feeling about the future of them once James Gunn was announced?
Sure. So before the prior regime, the DCU or DCEU, I guess you would
EU,
call
yeah.
it. I thought that it was a lot of hit and miss. Not everything was bad, and not everything was good. I'm one of the people who actually enjoyed Man of Steel. I also enjoyed the BVS, not the theatrical cut because that cut made 0 cents, but
The Ultimate Edition.
the Ultimate
Yeah.
Edition, which added so much more context. That was like, oh, this is a movie. There's a full story here. So yeah, so I enjoyed that, and then you know there were different things that I didn't really vibe with, such as Suicide Squad. Actually, and Aquaman. I actually did enjoy the first Shazam and the second Shazam. I think the problem with Shazam is that it's impossible to market. but at least in my opinion, because there's nothing about it that an adult would take seriously. So it's really hard to sell. Oh, this kid is turning into this adult, and there's this big kid acting like a child, right?
Right.
Unless you do something like Big with Tom Hanks. I know that's a really weird comparison, but we're
Great movie though.
comparing big kids. Yeah, so I think there's a lot of hit and miss. Unfortunately, I think that Zack Snyder got kind of raked through the coals a little bit.
Absolutely.
As fans are wanting to do, there's a lot of context that they just decide to strip out and just decide to look at the end product, which I don't blame someone for looking at the end product. But even during Justice League, right? He didn't just leave Justice League for no reason. I believe his daughter passed away and he had a lot of
Yeah.
personal issues that were going on. So you can say, oh, Zack Snyder is terrible for Justice League. And I just don't see how the stripping of that context actually helps our discourse, right?
Yeah.
Suicide Squad was terrible. The Suicide Squad was fantastic. And I think like the one of the bigger issues that we see in especially like movie spaces is the disconnect between what is reality and what's not. And what I mean by that is no amount of money that a movie earns determines whether or not it's a quality movie. And if a movie doesn't earn a lot, I'm saying the same thing twice, but essentially, if a movie makes $1 billion, it doesn't mean it's a good movie. If a movie makes $5, it doesn't mean it's a bad movie. And I think a lot of our discourse is around, oh, it didn't make $1 billion or it didn't do this. I don't think a lot of fans understand that making $1 billion for a movie is not a normal practice. That's just not how things work until the MCU came along. And
what is it? Is it only there's only 53 movies in the $1 billion club, something like that?
I'm not even sure. I know another channel. I wish I remember his name. Just did he ranked every single $1 billion movie. As soon as I find the name of the channel, I'll post.
Was it Film Stocked? I feel like I saw Film Stock do that.
I feel like it might have been. But yeah, I think that's a wonderful video idea. But yeah, so there's not a lot, so it's a very rare occurrence. It just the MCU for a while just made it seem like that was the norm, and it's just not.
Right.
Yeah.
Because the only DCU movie to make it to $1 billion was Aquaman.
Right.
Right.
Which is kind of part of my point because I don't particularly enjoy Aquaman. I don't think it's a terrible movie at all. I just don't think it's very good. It's for a lot of the film, it's very toneless, and it just seems like there's a lot of score missing. A lot of the scenes just don't have a score, which is really strange to me. But there's a lot of good parts about it too, such as Black Manta. I don't think anyone in their right mind would have thought that Black Manta could translate to the screen well, but he absolutely did. The big fishbowl head actually looked good on screen, and that's quite an accomplishment because it's a very silly suit. There's no reason for his helmet to be that big. So there's good and bad with everything. And to the second half of your question, what was the second half of your question? Because I'm trying.
Oh yeah. So basically, I'll ask you first. Would you call yourself a fan of the DCEU up until this point? Would you say that you're a fan of the DCEU, or were a fan?
Yes. Only because I'm not a fan of most things, right? Okay. So for me, fandom has very little to do whether you like every single thing something does. Fandom has everything to do with whether or not you're interested in that thing, and you just, whether or not you're willing to engage in that thing. So yeah, I was a fan of it. I didn't like everything it did, but I was there. I saw every movie. So it's hard to call myself not a fan if I was so invested in it that I saw everything that it did.
That's a good point. So going off of that, kind of iffy, yes. Mm-hmm. Then James Gunn gets announced that he's taking over DC. And how are you feeling about that when that is announced?
I think it's a great idea. I'm one of the people who really thinks that James Gunn is kind of underrated in a lot of ways. And I think that he will do a good job at helping foster different types of stories. I think one of the big things that people are trepidatious about is that every movie will turn out to be like a James Gunn movie. I think that
Right.
James Gunn is smart enough to allow the directors that he hires to do their own thing and to cook. And because I think that he knows that because he benefited from Feige allowing him to kind
Yeah.
of do his own thing. The Guardians movies are like nothing else in the MCU, and they work so well because of that. So I think that he would allow his directors and his writers the same kind of rope as he received.
Yeah. And like going off of what you were saying, like I think some people forget or just don't know. Before James Gunn had the whole thing go down and he got fired from Disney and stuff, he
Mhm.
was like Kevin Feige's right hand man. Like they
Right.
had a plan to set him up to lead the cosmic side of the MCU, which
Yes.
I feel like honestly you can feel the effect of James Gunn leaving the MCU because a lot of their stuff has been cosmic or at least cosmic related recently,
Mhm.
and it doesn't feel cohesive. It doesn't feel, and
Right.
I feel like that's because they lost the guy who was supposed to be leading that, and I feel like people don't pay attention to that very much. But going off of what you said too, the fact that James Gunn has the Marvel experience and that he's going to be able to bring his knowledge from that into the DCU is something that I was really excited for as well. But now
Yeah.
we're in this period, we're in this transitional period, and I'm not going to lie, it's not going as smoothly as I was hoping that it was going to go because I was hoping that it was just going to be very clearly the DCEU was that, and this
Right.
is what the DCU is going to be. But now we're getting a lot of confusing reports coming out. I mean, what did you think of Wonder Woman being the talks recently of Gal Gadot saying that we are going to do another Wonder Woman 3, but then you have this other source saying no they're not. Like does that not feel like the leadership may not be as strong when you have at least public wise looking from the public?
Yeah.
It feels kind of messy to me. It feels like get your focus on, like get everyone on the same page. Like what's
Mhm.
going on?
Yeah, I think public perception would definitely see it and see it as a mess, as looking like a mess. But I think the thing that we should really hold on to is that until James Gunn says something out of his mouth, which is exactly what he's been known to do since he's taken over DC,
Yeah.
I don't believe any report from anything because he himself will go out and say, "Yes, this is true." Yeah, no, that's not true. I don't know where you guys got that from. So until I hear it from the horse's mouth, way more than actually Feige ever gave us, because he was CIA. He didn't give us anything. So so yeah, I can't really not engage, but I can't really entertain these differing reports until I actually hear it from him. And the fact that one source said, "Hey," oh, Gal Gadot said that, "Hey, I'm going to be doing Wonder Woman 3." And I'm sorry if you hear my dog.
Oh, that's
Um,
okay.
one source said, "Hey, I'm going to be," or she said, "Hey, I'm going to be doing Wonder Woman 3," and another source says, "No, that's not true. We're not doing another Wonder Woman movie." I kind of lean towards the no, they're not doing it. Even though, like I said, I can't believe anything until I hear from James Gunn himself.
Right. But
Yeah.
I will say that Gal Gadot coming out and saying this, that's a reliable source. I mean, she's Wonder Woman. It's coming from Wonder Woman herself. So the
Yeah.
fact that you even have an actor, one of your actors, going out there and saying that, hey, we had this conversation. They assured me that I'm getting my third movie. Like, what do you think that is then? Do you think that that's maybe a miscommunication behind closed doors that now Gal Gadot is saying to everybody? Or do you think this is Gal Gadot? Do you think she's lying, just trying to get the fans to get on her side and maybe convince James Gunn and Peter Safran that they need to do Wonder Woman 3 because the fan reception from her comments were so big? Like, what do you think was the motivation behind Gal Gadot saying this publicly?
I gotta tell you the truth. I don't know.
Yeah.
But what I want to be careful with is I don't want to attack her character and say that she's a liar because I don't know that, and I'm not going to assign something to her
Mhm.
that's not true, right? Or that I don't know to be a fact, right? If it
Absolutely.
comes out that she is a liar, then she's a liar. But until then, I'm very big on do not conclude anything about anyone until you actually see it from them or hear it from them in terms of like character wise. So yeah, I'm not going to call her a liar. I don't know what's going on. To me, I feel like it's not true only because it doesn't make any sense. But other than
Right.
that, I can't really speak to whether or not she's a liar because I wouldn't want anyone to call me a liar. You know what I mean? So
Right.
I'm not going to do that to anybody else.
Yeah, and I'm not necessarily saying that she is lying. It's just
Right.
there's
Yeah.
three options or a couple options here, but I'm thinking of three specifically of why she would do this.
Hmm.
She was told that, and James Gunn and Peter Safran just lied to her face. There
Right.
was a miscommunication,
Right.
or I guess there's four, or it's actually happening, and the
Yeah.
source is, I mean, because whenever it says a source, and
Yeah.
like you kind of have to take that with a grain of salt, right? Because
Big one.
Gal Gadot's actually with Warner Brothers, like we know that she's an actor, she is Wonder Woman. I take her word a little bit more reliable than a source, a nameless source,
Right.
but it's just the fact that you have an actor out here saying this, but your source is saying this, and then you also add to the fact that James Gunn has said like Peacemaker season 2 is happening. Peacemaker was a part of the DCEU as far as we
Right.
know, and Waller is coming back. So the fact that it looks like he is picking and choosing who gets to stay, who gets to go.
Hmm.
How are you feeling about that?
Um, like our previous guest, like your previous guest said, I would much rather them just do a hard reset and a hard
Mm-hmm.
that and also if you're going to do Peacemaker, I'm fine with him doing that because he also said that the Batman and Joker Folio do I hope I'm pronouncing that right are both going to be was essentially black label DC stuff or
Mm-hmm.
Elseworlds kind of stuff. So if you
Elseworld,
do
yeah.
bring back Peacemaker, cool, just make it an Elseworlds thing. But let's not mix these things and make it confusing for everyone around. Let's not put hurdles in front of ourselves that we don't need. If you have to explain why this person exists in this universe and have to like hope that the fans get it, I don't think that it's a good idea to pursue that because there's me and you who are intimately involved in these things and watch every single thing and know about the business dealings of uh, Warner Brothers and Disney and all this other stuff who are initiated, as Bane would say, right?
Right.
Um, and then there's the people who buy the tickets who actually like support these products who just want to show up to a movie to have a good time. Don't make it difficult for them.
Yes, that's
Yeah,
the biggest
so,
thing for me too. Is it's almost getting to the point where I would say that it's going to confuse audiences because, like you've
right,
mentioned before, like they have Elseworlds, like they kind of talked about how they're going to retroactively put the Batman and the Joker under Elseworlds,
right.
and I think the difference though with adding something like Peacemaker or Wonder Woman 3 into the Elseworlds category
Hmm.
is that they were clearly defined as being a part of a cinematic universe and the
That's a good point.
audiences know that.
That's a
So
good
if
point.
you decide to move forward with those and put it into Elseworlds, you're almost running two cinematic universes at that point. Because in the audience's minds, it's a continuation because they saw that character with Ben Affleck's Batman,
Right.
and now that character's in another movie. So this is a continuation of that universe. And then we got that other DC universe over there. And then eventually you're gonna get my grandparents going, well, I don't know which Batman I'm watching. Like,
Right.
you know?
That's actually a really good point, and I totally agree with you. I would actually change my mind completely on that. Just reset everything. Don't bring anything back because it just makes it way too confusing. My hope is that Blue Beetle, which currently, I mean, I haven't seen the movie. I'm seeing it next week or this week coming up.
Nice.
I don't know if there's any remnants of the DCEU in there, but if there's not, that's a very easy move into that, right? He was like, hey, no, he never met those people. He's not even a part of that. That's very easy to do. And with some cool editing, you could probably get it all out of there. So
Yeah, that's
I
true.
really wouldn't, I really wouldn't encourage bringing those other elements into the new universe. And also, wouldn't you want to just start from scratch? Like, just
That's what you would
make
think,
your
right?
own thing? I feel like that's way better than trying to use someone else's toys, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a really good point, man. Well, look, I appreciate you jumping on with me today, man. I appreciate you being here and talking with me. And before we bring on Jonah from the Cosmic Broadcast, why don't you tell people where you can be found?
Okay, so yes, I'm on YouTube at See For Yourself. You can find me there. I have a new movie marathon coming up that's starting this week called The Unseen 1970 to Present, where we're going to watch one movie from each year between 1970 to the present that I've never seen before. And the fans and the subscribers get to vote on those movies. And people who are not subscribers get to vote on those movies. So thank you so much, Zach, for having me on. And I'll see you next time.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk again soon.
All right.
Enjoy your weekend.
You as well. Bye-bye.
All right, let's get Jonah up in here. What's going on,
Hey, what's going on, man?
Doing well.
Good to
How
see
you
you,
doing?
man. How you doing?
I'm doing
Doing
well.
doing well. Seems like we're already asking each other the same question at the same time.
I think there's a little bit of a delay. That's
No, you're
hilarious. All right, man. So, James Gunn's DCEU, or DCU, we should say, but I feel like that's part of the problem is the fact that I just called it DCEU. Same kind of question to you as I asked some of our other guests. How were you feeling about the DCEU, and how were you feeling once it was announced that James Gunn was taking over DC?
Yeah, absolutely. So I, for one, was very high on the DCU. Ironically, I think they had more hits than misses, and
All right.
while they're not the epitome of cinematic excellence, they are mostly all very enjoyable. I enjoy Man of Steel. I enjoy both Shazam movies. I enjoy Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice, but the extended edition, keyword extended edition, like we mentioned before, the original Justice League doesn't exist in my opinion. That is out of my mind. But all of the Wonder Woman, I love the first Wonder Woman movie. Wonder Woman 2, that's a whole nother story. That's one of those few examples of a miss rather than a hit. But overall, I enjoyed almost all of them. I'm not a diehard, Snyder cultist. I love his vision because at the end of the day, it was his vision, and he got to see it. I don't want to say mostly realized, but he was in the process of executing his whole vision. And when things were going, I thought that, if the train was rolling, then why stop it? Because at the moment I was enjoying it. I loved the Snyder cut, the 4-hour Snyder cut. Won't be able to go back and watch that all the time because, quite frankly, that's a lot of time to set out.
It's a long movie.
But, yeah, it's a long movie, but it's not a bad movie. It's incredible. I just can't. It's like Endgame. I can't go back and rewatch a 3-hour movie all the time, but it doesn't mean I don't enjoy it. And for what they teased at the end with Darkseid, I was still on board. If hypothetically this whole James Gunn thing never happened and we were going to get Justice League 1, 2, and 3 as Snyder's vision was going to entail, I would have still been on board. I still don't think Snyder quite got some of the characters right, but entertainment-wise, I was having no issues with it. And I think that is where I was at leading up to just the absolute debacle of the last couple of years for DC, because I was one of those people where I would rather sit back and see what happens as opposed to jumping to conclusions, especially with all of the things that have just come and gone. And Henry Cavill making this announcement of how happy he was to be back as Superman, and then 3 days later them going, yeah, no, we're not bringing him back. And it's things like that that showed me that I should stop trying to get excited about things until I can actually tangibly see them. So that's kind of where I'm at now at the state of the DCU as a transition into the DCU.
All right, awesome, man. So you were a fan of the Zack Snyder stuff. Were you disappointed when they announced that they weren't going to move forward with any of it?
I don't think I was disappointed. I think it was more so of where can we go from here? I was more so anticipating if we're going to move on from Snyder, just like how your previous guest said, let's move on from it in its entirety. Right. I am a James Gunn enthusiast. I think he, again, has not missed a single project. I think everything he's done has been, is incredible. My thing is, why are we already doubting James Gunn when we haven't got to see any of his actually fully realized projects? Because even coming up to Blue Beetle, we're still at a time where projects and movies were made before he was the head of DC.
Right.
The Flash, Blue Beetle, even Aquaman 2, all of these movies are coming out that he's involved with, but he wasn't there since the beginning. So there's a lot of people with pitchforks ready to knock down James Gunn's house and be like, you're ruining this. And in my opinion, we haven't quite got to see his vision yet. So that's why I'm very much trying to pump the brakes to see his fully realized vision for the DC as a whole, because it's very clear he has a vision. He's, making these casting choices of Superman, and announcing all of these projects, and how he wants everything to be interconnected with movies, TV shows, video games. That part I'm curious about, but
I'm
still,
very iffy on that.
the vision's there, and I like vision. So as long as he has a plan that he can execute, sign me up. But I'm not going to freak out yet, because we still have to get through all of these middle of the pack, are they or are they not projects.
Yeah. And like going off to your point, like absolutely. That's why we're asking the question, is it looking like a mess? Because we haven't seen anything from it. We're not going to see anything from it for like 2 years. So we can't say it's a mess or if it's not a mess at this point at all. But we're in the transitional phase. And with the transitional phase, we're starting to see a little bit of where he's going. And yes, everyone, you can have a vision, but doesn't necessarily mean that your vision's going to turn out well, right? Like the whole video games thing that you were mentioning, where he said like everyone who's an actor in the movies, if their character appears in a cartoon, they are voicing them in the cartoon, they're voicing them in the video games. We're going to have this overarching story told in animation and live action and video games. And when he announced that, I was like, okay, that's a lot to ask of the audience. Like, hopefully you're not going the MCU route where it's like you have to watch the MCU shows to understand what's going to go on in the movies. Because if I have to play a video game to understand something that happens in a movie or introduces a new character, no, that's not going to work for me. And I trust that that's not what he's doing though. Like I trust that he's not going to do that, because I do have faith in James Gunn. I have a lot of faith in James Gunn. He's a very brilliant man. But when you look at he's just stepping into a position of being a leader of a studio. And if you listen to his interview on the Inside of You podcast, I think he gave a lot of insight and some real and raw truth as to how that's been for him. And I think one of the things that James Gunn hit on that interview is how he's not someone who's used to saying no. He talked about something along that. I'm paraphrasing him, but he did say something along the lines of like, that's difficult for him, and he didn't realize how often he'd have to do it, or it didn't hit him how often he'd have to do it. So I'm starting to wonder if, like, do you think that he is he's thinking too personally with some of these people as opposed to business wise? Because you got Peacemaker's his baby. Like Peacemaker, he made that. He got close with the cast. His wife's in it, for crying out loud. John Cena, like
just like everything else,
right? Like he was just a working director. He was creative on that. And now he's being asked to take over DC as the studio head or co-studio head. And he's like, well, I'm going to bring my friends along with. Like, do you get that feeling from him at this moment? Because that's kind of what I'm feeling.
So like slight nepotism vibes? Like just a slight little like, oh, I kind of, I mess with you, so I'll bring you over. That's what a lot of like people are calling him some crazy names. Nepotism is definitely being thrown out. Like, oh, he only wants to bring on people that he's close with. I don't know James Gunn as a human being, but I know from behind the scenes and the stuff that I've observed, he is a very he's very deeply connected with his emotions, and he values relationships above all things. That's why he creates incredible movies with the misfits like the Guardians, who are deeply built around a story of family and of emotions. And so I believe that the characters are a reflection of the creator. In this case, he didn't create the characters, he created this incredible team that he came up with just a pen and paper and his imagination. So James Gunn is a very deeply emotional and passionate person. And so I could see that being a difficult thing for him, because he goes from being a director to the head of DC Studios, the head. And so I think in his case, there's a lot more nuance that has to come with that. And so there are maybe some things that he maybe shouldn't say, or there are some things he shouldn't do, or like I mentioned, the people that he has to say no to. That's a hard part of the business, but it's still business. And since he's barely he hasn't even been in for a year, right?
No, I think it's getting close, but not yet.
Gotcha. So it hasn't even been a year yet. And I think he still has some things to learn. I like how humble he's been and very present on things like X, where he's been talking to people and going, hey, we're working on it. Here's what we're working on. I'm going to shoot straight with you. I'm not going to try to mislead you. And he hasn't given me any reason to doubt that. So that's what I think going into this new phase, I don't have any reasons to not trust him. And I think he also has some things to learn because nobody's perfect, and the
Yeah.
lead, basically the Kevin Feige of the DC, is going to carry a lot of weight with it, and I think that's something he's going to have to just slowly get used to.
Absolutely. I like our channel member Spoiler Kings in here. What's going on, Spoiler Kings? A James Gunn film will always have his wife, Nathan Fillion, and Michael Rooker.
And some
That's-
form of banger soundtrack.
It's so true though. I love that so much. Yeah, no, but that's the thing with James Gunn, right? Is he's always been someone who like you said, is very relationships first, and in that way he's brought a lot of people that he's worked with in films into other films. Like you see Michael Rooker from Guardians of the Galaxy show up in the Suicide Squad, and stuff like that. So, but the fact that he kind of seems to be playing that as well with the DCU as a head of the, like, I'm sure he's probably thinking Margot Robbie as Harley Quinn will still be a part. They haven't made that official or anything, but like just the fact that he's saying like Amanda Waller will still be Viola Davis. They're still moving on with Peacemaker season 2. But let's talk about the audience perspective for a second. Do you think that from the audience perspective, it's just too much? It's just too confusing? Do you think that we need more clarification of exactly what it is that the DCU will look like?
Yes, 100%. The audience desperately needs clarification because look at the box office from the last year. As we're in the transition, The Flash is a movie that should have brought in close to $1 billion. You know, Shazam 2, while it shouldn't have made $1 billion. It should have made way more than it did. We are seeing the direct results of audiences not seeing having a clear idea of what's going on, and it's reflecting in the box office. I can almost guarantee you that Aquaman 2 is not going to make the $1 billion that the first one made.
I don't think so.
Or Blue Beetle coming up. I mean, I anticipate it to be an enjoyable film, but I don't think it's going to blow anybody away again. So that's like 5 movies in the past year that are not going to perform well. And that's because a lot of it is not that they're making totally garbage movies, but audiences are just as confused. They don't know what the heck is going on. And if there's no vision, they're not buying what James Gunn or whoever is at, running the show DC, if they're not buying what they're selling, then they're not going to show up, and the money talks. So I think that is why audiences need clarification. I don't know how they could do that. That's not necessarily something I have game planned for, but James Gunn needs to bring something more to the table than Gal Gadot may come back, oopsie, maybe, I don't know. We'll see, and letting, because I remember I heard Ken mention about, Gal Gadot as the actor taking her word for it. And my thing is, even though she's an actor, she doesn't have the ability to put herself into movies. So I don't know why all of a sudden she's saying these things, because Gal Gadot is an incredible lady. I think she's very sweet, very kind. I've heard a lot of her interviews. She's amazing. But why is Gunn allowing all of these things to start running rampant behind the scenes that are causing more tabloids, that are causing more drama than if he did the classic Kevin Feige at Marvel, where he's standing there as a sniper, 300 yards back, Kevin Feige's making sure nobody spills any secrets. And that worked out so well for Marvel for years. So I'm surprised that James Gunn's not shutting some of this stuff down early, because it is causing a lot of turmoil.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's exactly what I was talking about with Ken as well. It's like, how are people, like, you need to get your people on the same page. Like, how could you have an actress that is part of at least the past DC universe that audiences know and love out here saying that she is continuing, that you promised her that she will have nothing to worry about, and then you also have this source out here saying, oh no, that's not at all what happened. James Gunn and Peter Safran never promised her anything. Like, I don't know. It's just like, as a head of a studio, and I know that you can't control everything. Obviously, I've never been a head of a studio, so what do I know? Right. But it just feels like mismanagement or something. Like, it just feels like something is not quite right over there. There's a lot of stuff happening.
Yeah, and I think for me, I acknowledge all of that stuff, but I'm still optimistic. I'm still hopeful, because if we can just make it a little bit longer, hopefully the writer strike and everything comes to its conclusion with a fair resolution, and we can start, because Hollywood's going to be in trouble for the next couple of years because we're already severely doing so many projects. But let's get to Superman Legacy, and since that's going to be kind of not really the kicking off point, but the kicking off point. Let's see what the vision is after that. Let's see what James Gunn's got cooking in the kitchen. But until then, keep your people in order, like you said. Let's maintain this. At least give an idea that you know what you're doing, because then people will feel a lot more confident about what's to come in the future and be way more excited about projects like Superman Legacy without having to wonder, is Wonder Woman going to cameo in Superman Legacy? Stuff like that.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, we've already saw her pop up twice this year, so I think audiences are
literally she
expecting her
just
to
she just
pop
shows up and she's
everywhere.
just like, "Hey boys," yeah, she's like, "Hey boys, did you guys miss me?" And it's like, what are you doing here?
Absolutely, man. Well, thank you so much for joining me here, Jonah. Thank you for talking with me. I appreciated you popping on. Appreciate you being a member. And before we bring on Dark Movies, tell people where they can find you.
All right, what's going on, guys? So you can find me on YouTube at The Cosmic Broadcast. You can find me on Twitter at Broadcast Cosmic, because the other username for Cosmic Broadcast was taken. Love to see that. You can also find me on Instagram and on TikTok at The Cosmic Broadcast. I have a Blue Beetle review coming out later on this week once I see it on Thursday, so be looking out for that. I'm also in the middle of editing all of my Marvel movies ranked, or all MCU movies ranked, which is taking way longer than I thought, but once it comes out, I know you guys will enjoy it. But with all that said, thank you so much, Zach, for having me on the show. Had a great time, and I'll see you guys soon.
Absolutely, man. We'll talk to you again soon.
All right,
Have a good weekend.
Care. You too.
All right, and last but certainly not least, at least it looks like that, we're gonna bring on Dark Movies. What's going on, my
Hello.
man?
What's up? How you doing?
I'm doing well, dude. How are you? How was your week?
Honestly, just amazing. I saw Haunted Mansion. I saw Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles again for the for the second
Nice.
times, and yeah, it's amazing. Honestly,
How was Haunted Mansion? Because I didn't hear too many
Ooh.
things about that.
For me, I love the original, and going into this movie, I just loved it. Honestly, I just loved it.
That's awesome, man. And I really enjoyed Ninja Turtles myself. That was a
Oh
great
yeah,
movie.
yeah,
So we're here to talk about DCU. Here to talk about
yes.
James Gunn. But before we get into the DCU, let's go back a little bit. Let's hear what your experience was with the DCEU. What were you thinking of that as that was going on before it ultimately ended?
So, like I said, like in the other members talk live, I was just casually watching. So I loved most of it, but when I rewatch it now, it's like yeah, hit or miss. Like many people, like you said, I loved like Suicide Squad, Zack Snyder's Justice League, and actually the Flash. I actually really liked it.
I like
It.
The Flash too. I'm
Yeah,
kind of sad that movie
right.
bombed so bad
Yeah,
because I thought it was fun. I enjoyed it.
yeah. And then we come like to the first Justice League, because that's something. And then and then Suicide Squad, not the Suicide Squad, that was also just yeah, something. It was no,
It's
yeah,
a
no.
very messy put together movie. Like,
It
it's
is,
so
yeah.
choppy.
It is like I'm probably going to rewatch it, and I'm probably going to hate it still.
Yeah, I haven't watched it in a very long time. There was some stuff I
Yes,
liked about it though, like Will Smith and Margot Robbie. I thought were
yeah.
really good, and yeah, it has some fun moments.
There's some films, yeah, and then it's not the best, but like we have yeah, like yeah, we got Wonder Woman. I really liked.
Mm.
The second one, I don't know. It's yeah,
Yeah, it's not my favorite. It's probably my least
yeah,
favorite.
yeah. And an underrated movie I actually liked is Batman v Superman.
Batman vs
Many
Superman.
people many people hate it, but I actually liked it. I rewatched it in I think 1 month ago when I was on vacation. So I still love it, honestly.
That's awesome, man. So it doesn't sound like you're too heartbroken that the DCEU has ended. Am I correct?
Honestly not. No,
No.
honestly not.
All
No.
right. So what about James Gunn? What's your experience with James Gunn?
So how many movies have you seen? I've seen like 5 movies. Of course, all the Guardians, even the
Yep.
holiday special, and then the Suicide Squad. Absolutely love. Like I said, it's probably my favorite DCE movie.
My
And
favorite for
then
sure.
yeah, and then we have like Guardians 3. Like just heartbroken and absolutely amazing. Rewatched that yesterday actually. So yeah, just absolutely just the perfect ending for the trilogy. So I'm honestly just trust James Gunn with the not all my life, but like trust him so much.
Absolutely. So, were you? Is it safe to say that you were pretty pumped when they announced that James Gunn was going to be taking over DC?
Oh yeah, I was really hyped because I think the I think that one man who can actually make DC better is James Gunn.
Yes.
There's probably many more, but I think he's the best like vision. He has the best vision, I think.
I completely agree. Like when they announced him, I was so on board. I was so ready. I put all my faith in him. I still have my faith in him. I think he's going to do a good job. But
Yeah.
with the question that we're asking today, James Gunn's DCU, is it looking like a mess? Because obviously, haven't seen anything of it. The transitional phase has been a little rough, if you ask me. How have
Yeah,
you
it
been
is.
feeling the way that they've been handling transitioning from the DCEU to the DCU as a fan?
As a fan, honestly, it's a mess. I'm just confused. I don't think I can trust anyone but actually James Gunn on X or Twitter. I don't think like yeah, like discussion films or like Variety or any other source. I don't think I can trust them anymore with like Gal Gadot returning and then she not, and then who else are going like pick? Are you going to pick like yeah, like you said, Jared Leto or like yeah, just some random characters from DCU and to DCEU until DCU. Like I don't, it's just a mess, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like they need to get on the same page with a lot of things, and I feel like there's a lot of things too, where it kind of feels like James Gunn hasn't made up his mind fully on some stuff. Like we were talking about with Shazam: Fury of the Gods before that movie came out. I believe I may be remembering it wrong, but I do believe that James Gunn had said something like, like the door's open, like he's not necessarily not going to be Shazam anymore. And then when they waited and saw how that movie did, now all of a sudden it's dead silent. You don't really hear anything about whether or not Zachary Levi is going to continue in the DCU or not. And even just recently, like we got Blue Beetle coming out, and we have James Gunn over here saying he said on the Michael Rosenbaum podcast that the DCU's first character is going to be Blue Beetle, right? And that kind of
Yeah.
makes you go like, wait, what? Blue Beetle's going to be the first character, but not the first movie in the DCU. Like, do you think he's just throwing spaghetti at the wall and seeing what sticks? Like, hey, if the people love Blue Beetle will be in my DCU. But if they don't love Blue Beetle and that movie doesn't do very well, then we're not going to see Blue Beetle pop up in DCU. Like, what do you think about comments like that?
I think honestly, I think actually he might, yeah, he might actually just do that. Like if it flops, like it's probably going to do, sadly, but
Yeah,
still
it's not
excited
looking
for
good.
it. Yeah,
I'm looking forward
uh,
to it too.
yeah, I think when it's going, yeah, next or 2 weeks ago, 2 weeks, I'm going to see it. So
Nice.
yeah, and yeah, I think he just if it flops, he's not going to have it, but you might do it. I mean, you could actually do a good introduction with this character if see for yourself said like if you just cut out everything from the DCU, like nothing to do with DCU at all, like you just have a clean plate, like this movie's like the Guardians, like had nothing to do. Yeah, it had to do to Marvel, but like not like the Avengers or anything like that.
Right.
So just take the character, take his own story. You can grab him, just grab him. Not just don't take anything from the DCU. Just reboot the whole thing.
But even with Blue Beetle coming out at the time that it's coming out at, like you can take all the DCEU stuff out of it. You can take out Easter eggs and mentions of characters. You can totally do that. But the reality is that Blue Beetle is still coming out at a time during the DCEU, right? We got Blue Beetle, then we have Aquaman. So in the audience's minds, this is going to be associated with like Black Adam, right? Like, oh, Black Adam came out around the time as Blue Beetle and stuff like that. So if you have Blue Beetle show up in the DCU, even if the movie doesn't really relate to anything in the DCEU, I feel like that's still going to be confusing because I feel like audiences are still going to think, oh, that character came out before Aquaman 2, which means that that character's movie was part of those movies, and now those movies are a part of this new Superman movie that's still coming out. Like, do you think there's a danger there in still bringing a character over like that into the DCU, even if they're not going to associate his movie with the DCU? It's so confusing.
It is, yeah. It might be a bit like danger, yeah. If I was like the head of DCU or something, like I would honestly just move it to at least after everything from the DC EU is gone and it's completely like there. Maybe like February, maybe February next year or anything like not just in the middle of like the Flash and Aquaman 2. It's for like if I'm going to do, if I was like just casually watching again like I used to, I would be confused.
Yeah, it's just it doesn't feel like they know exactly, at least from the outsider perspective, that they know exactly what they want to do. It's like they're waiting to see how things do. If they're successful with the audiences, if they're not successful, that will determine yes or no whether they come in. Because even Peacemaker became, I think it was like the #1 show in all the world at one point when it was streaming on.
Okay.
I think it was at one point. It was like the #1 show on television when it was premiering on HBO Max. So it's like when you have a popularity like that, it's hard to be like, well, we're just going to axe that off and we're not going to continue with it. But when you continue with it, you're ultimately in some ways still continuing with that universe. Because we did see in the finale, we saw Ezra Miller's Flash. We saw Jason Momoa's Aquaman in Peacemaker. So we're like subconsciously, we know that character was a part of that world. What do you think of Peace? Do you think that they should do a Peacemaker season 2, or do you think that that's a mistake?
I absolutely loved Peacemaker. Thought it was probably the best DC show I've seen. Honestly, I've just seen the Flash, like CW Flash, and then this one, of course, not the connection at all. But yeah, still, but like any other people said on this live stream, make it at least DC Elseworld. If you're going to make like a Peacemaker season 2 or for example, like Gal Gadot's like Wonder Woman 3, not make it in the DCU, but like DC Elseworld, I think.
Yeah, and do you think that would still be confusing though? The fact that those characters, do you feel like by doing that you're ultimately running 2 universes at the same time, even if you don't intend to? Do you think that still feels that way?
Oh yeah, I just caught. Yeah, I do think it would be actually confusing with 2 universes, but if you just want to make like one more movie with Gal Gadot, like just a trilogy, just do that. Don't care, just don't care about it. Like, just do that anyways, just to make it, and then make probably like season 2 of Peacemaker to probably end the show then, and then just have it cleaned, wipe off, just goodbye.
Yeah,
DC.
I think that's the way to go too. So I guess we'll just end by asking the question: in your opinion, from where we're at right now, is the DCU looking like a mess?
In my kind of critically, kind of on my personal thing, no. Casually, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, just casually, yes, but like not me personally. No, I'm still excited, and we need to see Superman Legacy before anything we can know anything.
Absolutely true. Yeah, we need to see something before we fully know. And I'm
Yeah.
excited. I'm looking forward to it. Hopefully it doesn't get pushed to 2026 or anything like that with
Oh,
the
yeah,
strikes, but I think it's a possibility. But either way, really excited to see what James Gunn's going to do.
Yes, yeah, I'm super excited. Yeah, like you said, hopefully it doesn't push back. Hopefully, honestly, just the writer's strike and the older strike just be fairly like not fairly like, but be resolved fairly. Pay the actors and just pay them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's ultimately what we want, and that's ultimately that needs to get done. Well, thank you so much, man, for jumping on with me today. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being
so
a
much,
member.
Honestly, it's been so much fun.
It's been great, man. And tell people where they can find you before you head out.
So I'm on YouTube, DxarkMovies, DxarkMovies. My goal is to get 1,000 subscribers, even though I only have 100. But hey, maybe you can do it. And you can also find me on Twitter or X by the same name. So yeah, it's been an honor to be here, and Yeah, thank you.
Well, thank you, man. It's been an honor having you here, and you enjoy the rest of your weekend. All right.
You too, man.
We'll talk again soon.
Yes.
All right, guys, and that just leaves the question for you, James Gunn's DCU. Is it looking like a mess? Comment down below and let us know.